Senator Runciman, followed by Senators Cttee and Joyal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, I'm a bit of a hardliner on this, and unlike Senator Baker, I have concerns about in my view, the abuse of judicial discretion with respect to the dealings with individuals who engage in this kind of activity. And certainly during my time in Ontario, I know very much aware of the frustration of police services with respect to the penalties or lack of penalties that were dealt out with respect to many of these, I think, very serious situations. But I am concerned about some elements of the legislation because when we talk about mandatory minimums, and there seems to be at least one or two loopholes in this, the suggestion, that the fact that an individual can apparently apply for drug treatment or indicate a willingness to apply for drug treatment seems to be I have a concern about that in terms of how that's going to work, and it could be the other element of this is the Crown's notifying the individual that they are going to before the plea is entered, that they're going to notify them of the imposition of the minimum punishment, and again that could be, I think, used as a loophole with respect to achieving the goal that we hope to achieve here. And I think, in terms of this, there should be some exemptions from this as well. Like the setting traps element, for example. It seems to me that part of the purpose of mandatory minimums was to deter the kind of conduct that we're using as factors that trigger mandatory minimums. So I have some concern about that. The other element of this, I think that you should consider as well parole ineligibility. I know we're talking about 2- and 3-year sentences here, which will get these individuals into a federal institution. But I'm not sure what the parole eligibility is in those situations. But I know there are other areas where we have imposed parole ineligibility, and I think that should be a consideration here as well.
You've touched on a number of areas, Senator Runciman, and I appreciate your interest and your concern on these. I mean, with respect to one aspect that you talked about, it seems to me it's reasonable for the Crown to give notice to the defense that there will be an imposition of mandatory sentences. It seems to me that the individual who has the right to prepare a defense, may take other steps or take appropriate steps in terms of assembling their defense if they have a better understanding of what the consequences they are facing. So it's reasonable. This, at the same time, does not, as Senator Baker points out, there are maximum sentences within the criminal code that for a serious crime, even for one for which the Crown did not give notice that a mandatory sentence, there's nothing stopping the court in appropriate circumstances from handing down very serious offenses. And so we can't deal with all aspects of every issue that touches on this, but I believe this is one more important component in making sure that law enforcement agencies have the tools that they need to deal with this very serious crime.
That's it? Oh, Senator Runciman, you're so great. Senator Carignan, are you trying to get in a question supplémentaire? No?
Do you have a supplementary? No? All right. Senator Cttee, followed by Senator Joyal, and I also have a question. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I've listened very carefully to the questions that were put by Senator Baker with respect to the definition of trafficking or trafficker, and I also listened to the Minister's answers. Just a clarification, Minister. If you have a young person in a schoolyard who is trafficking one or two of the prohibited pills, but in the schoolyard it's not trafficking as it is defined in the bill. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. The definition of trafficking, if that would that young person be considered a trafficker, and would that young person be subject to a mandatory minimum time in prison, say 2 years, if that were a first offense?
Question, Senator. It'll turn on the facts of each individual case. Now, trafficking means if you're selling, administering, transferring, transporting, selling, offering. I mean, there's a definition giving. Depending on the circumstances of the case. My point is that you're right. If somebody is on school property and is giving amphetamines, cocaine, heroin, any of the ones listed in here, that you could be charged with trafficking. It would turn on the facts of each particular case. But you're right. The message has to go out that for individuals who think that schoolyards are a good place to get into the amphetamines, date rape business, cocaine, heroin, marijuana, that you could be facing some very serious penalties. And you're quite correct, and your question's a good one, but you're quite correct. Young person, again, I'm not getting into the whole Youth Criminal Justice Act. There's a whole different regime, of course, but that being said, you could be looking at some very serious. If you're an 18, 19-year-old and you're just visiting your old friends back at the school and you figure you'll just sell a little dope on this, or you're passing out date rape drugs, there could be some serious consequences, and we want them to get that message here. And anything we can do to help get that message out, I think will be of benefit to this country.
Okay, so the definition stays the same, because
the definition of trafficking stays the same. Yes, it does.
Okay, merci.
Chaput, Senator Joyal.
Thank you, Senator Chaput. Senator Joyal.
Maybe to bring the issue more at the broader policy level, which is, the war on drug, which put the issue in all its perspective. Did your department evaluate the effectiveness of the war on drug that has been launched by the United States?
They realize that the United States is not a perfect fit, Senator, in terms of everything is not identical in terms of the challenges that they have, but the department is aware of what takes place in the United States, Great Britain, Europe, Australia, other countries that face similar but not exactly the problems. This is a made-in-Canada solution. As I think I've told you another time, we have a look at all information, all experiences, and we come up with our own laws in this country.
What does puzzles me is that the difference of opinion that there is among, policy experts on the issue of prohibition. My great surprise, and I'll be candid with you, was when Professor Tom Flanagan, who of course you know certainly very well, I don't think anyone around this table here doesn't know, is Professor Flanagan, the Professor of Political Science of the University of Calgary, and he was instrumental in the campaign of Prime Minister Harper and the Conservative Party winning the election. So it's somebody with quite credentials in the Conservative Party. And when I read in the Globe and Mail last month, in fact September 20th, the following, and I quote, "The prohibition of drug doesn't work any better than the prohibition of alcohol. Drugs are now just as widely available as was alcohol before the repeal of that prohibition. And like the prohibition of alcohol, prohibiting of drugs is doomed to repeal in the long run." I was stunned, as a matter of fact, because he seems to share opinion with the president of the Fraser Institute, Michael Walker, who is not also renowned for his liberal leniency, or conservative MP Scott Reed. And they seems to be of the opinion that the so-called war on drugs is the wrong path. So what's your reaction in front of such opinion at that level? We are not here dealing with hippies or with side groups on the streets. Who are dealing with peoples who have long-standing credentials in thinking about policies Canada should embark upon.
I know. You know, we all get surprised, as you just indicated, some shocking comments you believe came from a couple of individuals. And I guess in my position as Justice Minister, I come across comments and opinions that shock me. 2 weeks ago, it was brought to my attention that Michael Ignatieff, the leader of the Liberal Party, said he favors the decriminalization of marijuana. I was shocked. I thought perhaps we had gotten past that idea that sends out the wrong message to young people about the seriousness of that particular drug. But then again, I say, well, okay, that's a difference of opinion. He believes that this is somehow would benefit Canada to decriminalize marijuana. I couldn't disagree with him more. And so in the end, we have to make up our own mind about what is good. And I can tell you, I talk on a regular basis with provincial attorneys general, law enforcement agencies, police officers, victims, ordinary Canadians, and I'm sure we are on the right track with this bill. And I hope this is going to get your support this time, Senator. This is a very balanced approach, sends out the correct message on these very serious crimes that we're talking about. But yes, sometimes we do get surprised. I was quite surprised about Mr. Ignatieff, but then again, we all have differences of opinion.
Mr. Flanagan teaches to students in school, in universities. He's not.
And Mr. Ignatieff speaks to the country as leader of the opposition. Again, I'm with you on that one. I do get surprised. I get shocked sometimes. And
let's see the arguments.
That one was being resurrected again was a shock to me.
Let's see the arguments supporting the position of Professor Flanagan. Prohibition leads to hypertrophic growth of the state security and surveillance apparatus, arbitrary searches and seizure of property, pointless criminalization of innocent activities, and growth of genuine criminality as a spin-off from the trade in forbidden drugs. End of quote. There are arguments there. In other words, the intentions are not sufficient to reach the objective of making sure that those who use the drugs are the one who should have access to it. And as I said, if it would be a liberal, I would say, oh, well, it's a liberal. But this is not a liberal. This is the epitome of conservative politics, who seem to think, and I quote him, instead of intensifying our own war on drugs, Canada should be prepared to move in that direction within the limits of practicality. So it's quite a, there is a reflection there. It's not just a position on the cuff. So my suggestion to you is that besides your good intentions, there are other two very respectable Canadians, even at the highest level of the conservative thinking brain trust, that thinks that this approach is doomed to fail.
Senator, you were a cabinet minister yourself, and you get opinions from a lot of people, and you can have highly respected, high-ranking people. I gave you the example of Mr. Ignatieff. I respect many things about Mr. Ignatieff. I completely disagree with him. And as a minister and as a government, we have to take a position on these. And I'm asking you to have a look at this bill that deals with trafficking. It deals with organized crime. People who bring drugs into this country. People who are into the grow-op business, Senator. This is a very balanced, reasonable approach that sends out the correct message to people who want to get involved with this activity. And again, this is not a reflection on my opinion of Mr. Ignatieff or indeed anybody else that you want to. We have to take a decision on this. And I guess in the case of Mr. Ignatieff, I completely disagree with him. I would go so far as to suggest to him, you want to go easy on people who get involved with drugs, but you're telling us on a day-to-day basis, crack down on people who don't fill out the census. Say, look, this is where we should be concentrating our efforts. But again, I respect people's different opinions, and I have to agree to disagree with many people I hear from. But in the end, as you know, as a minister of the Crown, you have to listen to all the different advice that you get, and you put together a very reasonable approach. And this is a great approach, and one that I hope this time is getting your support.
Senator Joyal, if you wish, I can put you down for a second round if we have time for one. Senator Watt has a question, and then I still want to put a question.
Okay, I do have some other questions, but I'm going to zero it only onto one because it's a very new topic. of the issue of why this and why not this.